participation in a process that validates an establishment that never meaningfully changes? What if that establishment doesn't want and doesn't have the consent of the governed? What if the two-party system was actually a mechanism used to limit so-called public opinion? What if there were more than two sides to every issue, but the two parties wanted to box you into a corner, one of their corners? What if there's no such thing as public opinion, because every thinking person has opinions that are uniquely his own? What if what we call public opinion was just a manufactured narrative that makes it easier to convince people that if their views are different, then there's something wrong with that, or there's something wrong with them? What if the whole purpose of the Democratic and Republican parties was not to expand voters' choices, but to limit them? What if the widely perceived differences between the two parties was just an illusion? What if the heart of the government policy remains the same no matter who's in the White House? What if the heart of government policy remains the same no matter what the people want? What if those vaunted differences between Democrat and Republican were actually just minor disagreements? What if both parties just want power and are willing to have young people fight meaningless wars in order to enhance that power? What if both parties continue to fight the war on drugs just to give bureaucrats and cops bigger budgets and more jobs? What if government policies didn't change when government leaders did? What if no matter who won an election, government stayed the same? What if government was really a revolving door for political hacks bent on exploiting the people once they're in charge? What if both parties supported welfare, war, debt, bailouts, and big government? What if the rhetoric that candidates displayed on the campaign trail was dumped after electoral victory? What if Barack Obama campaigned as an anti-war, pro-civil liberties candidate and then waged senseless wars while assaulting your rights that the Constitution is supposed to protect? What if George W. Bush campaigned on a platform of non-intervention and small government and then waged a foreign policy of muscular military intervention and a domestic policy of vast government borrowing and growth? What if Bill Clinton declared that the era of big government was over, but actually just convinced Republicans like Newt Gingrich that they can get what they want out of big government too? What if the Republicans went along with it? What if Ronald Reagan spent 6 years running for president, promising to shrink the government, but then the government grew while he was in the White House? What if, notwithstanding Reagan's ideas and cheerfulness and libertarian rhetoric, there really was no Reagan revolution at all? What if all this is happening again? What if Rick Santorum is being embraced by voters who want small government, even though Senator Santorum voted for the Patriot Act, for an expansion of Medicare, and for raising the debt ceiling by trillions of dollars? What if Mitt Romney is being embraced by voters who want anyone but Barack Obama, but they don't realize that Mitt Romney might as well be Barack Obama on everything from warfare to welfare? What if Ron Paul is being ignored by the media, not because, as it claims, he's unappealing or unelectable, but because he doesn't fit into the pre-manufactured public opinion mold used by the establishment to pigeonhole the electorate and create the so-called narrative that drives media coverage of elections? What if the biggest difference between most candidates was not substance, but style? What if those stylistic differences were packaged as substantive ones to reinforce the illusion of a difference between Democrats and Republicans? What if Mitt Romney wins and ends up continuing most of the same policies that Barack Obama promoted? What if Barack Obama's policies, too, are merely extensions of those from George W. Bush? What if a government that manipulated us could be fired? What if a government that lacked the true and knowing consent of the governed could be dismissed? What if it were possible to have a real game changer? What if we need a Ron Paul to preserve and protect our freedoms from the government? What if we could make elections matter again? What if we could do something about this? From New York, defending freedom every night of the week. Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? Is the best government really the one that governs the least? Can we ever have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution? If the Constitution was written to keep the government off the people's backs, why is the government all over us? Tonight, whatever happened to freedom? Understanding where we go from here should start with understanding how we got here. We are the free and independent people of the United States of America. We are free because those who preceded us fought a war against a person who was then the world's grandest king and who presided over what was then the world's grandest empire. The Founding Fathers risked, as they like to tell us, their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors for the freedom and independence they won and we have inherited. But they were not saints. And initially, their cause was not popular. From the records available today, the people who measure historical trends have concluded that in 1776, only about 1/3 of Americans supported the revolution. About 1/3 of Americans opposed it. And about 1/3 of them didn't care. When I first looked at these numbers, I thought, in 1776, this was the grandest fight for the greatest amount of freedom for the most people at any point in history. So who could possibly oppose it? And who in their right mind could not care? Fast forward to today and ask, who could possibly support a government that regulates everything from the strength of the water pressure in your shower to the size of the toilet bowl in your home to the thickness of the leather in your shoes? Who could want a government that punishes people for speech, that lets its own agents write their own search warrants, that fights wars just to keep the military-industrial complex busy, that debases all you own by printing worthless money and putting it into the stream of commerce, that gives away more than half the tax dollars it collects, and that, despite express provisions in the Constitution to the contrary, permits the president to lock up whoever
if you ain't never done anything in your whole life,
perhaps the colonists who didn't
tomorrow's the day. From here on out to tomorrow and from every election from now on, if Ron Paul don't win, you might as well just go ahead and pack your bags and start knocking on doors, because that's what you're going to have to do. Sleep in the street. Use the curb for a pillow.
Toward freedom. And the freedoms that they chose were pure. I mean, after we won
can you really afford any more taxes?
The new government
can you really afford to pay for groceries the way they are right now?
Think as they wished and say what they thought.
Can you really afford to pay $5 a gallon for gas again?
They could
you know it's coming, right?
Or choose not to worship.
They ain't going to shut up about it. Can you really afford that?
That troops would never enter their homes. That
for a tank of gas and you got 25 gallons.
And that the government could not
you're spending $100 right at $100 for a tank of gas, or a little more at $5 a gallon.
The neutral jury. All this was guaranteed to the first generation of Americans and to their posterity.
Wake up and smell the roses.
That would be us, because much
we
of
got
it
one
has been
chance
denied.
left. One, and I've been telling y'all this for a while.
And because Americans came to believe, even the 1/3 that were afraid and the 1/3 that didn't care, that these rights are ours by virtue of our humanity. Whether you believe that we are the highest order of natural selection,
we're either going to starve to death,
whether you believe as I do that we were created by God
or be just plain old killed off, because
you know in your heart
people are going to get tired of this being broke, and they're going to go to crime and corrupt to feed their family. And hell, I don't blame them. You can't blame them because they're hungry.
And yet, they have been denied.
The poor is going to be poor, and the middle class is going to be broke.
In fact,
they're going to be poor as well.
Which punished speech that was
we don't have no more time, people.
This happened because
the time
people
is
were afraid
now.
to challenge the tyranny
the time is now
of the
to wake up
America,
and
the
see what's going on.
To our freedom have come not from someone attacking
and
us, but from the government ignoring the Constitution.
I know it's not nice to look at. I don't like it either.
Get away with it. The worst
I hate it more than anybody else.
Were not those ratified by the states,
I like to see my flag stand up and hang proudly,
where all three branches
because it's my country too.
Agreed to look the other way. When
it breaks my heart to see it like this.
Bad things happen.
They should break yours too.
What shall we do? We should challenge authority,
people.
no matter who is in charge. We should challenge the majority
get the word out, please.
whenever it curtails anybody's freedom. We should side with freedom, no
the
matter
election's
what the government
tomorrow
says.
here
we
in
should
Florida.
put out of office those who push the government outside
if
the
you
Constitution.
ain't never done anything
no
in your whole life,
they just brought home.
Tomorrow's
We
the
should make
day.
the government afraid of us.
From here on out to
Afraid of
tomorrow
us.
and from
Because
every
as
election
Jefferson
from now
reminded
on,
us,
if
when the
Ron
people fear
Paul
the government,
don't
there is
win,
tyranny. But when the government
you
fears
might
the
as
people,
well
there is liberty.
just go ahead and
From New
pack your
York,
bags
defending
and
freedom.
start knocking on
Everybody's freedom
doors,
whenever
because
I
that's
can.
what you're going to have to do.
So long,
Sleep in
America.
the street. Use the curb for a pillow.